campus of Xavier University.
Look.
WBOK 1230 AM.
Go.
An Equity Media Station.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. President Biden will be delivering an address to the United Nations General Assembly soon. The annual meeting in New York will give the outgoing president a chance to outline his foreign policy. Experts expect the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East to dominate sideline discussions. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is declaring a state of emergency for dozens of counties as a storm gains strength heading to the Gulf of Mexico. What's now officially a potential cyclone is expected to become Tropical Storm Helene in the coming hours. Tennessee State University is announcing plans to make workforce adjustments and other cuts due to financial and operational shortfalls. Interim President Ronald Johnson made the announcement Friday during a meeting with the HBCU's Board of Trustees. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
The following is a paid program and does not necessarily express the views or opinions of Equity Media, its management, staff, or affiliates of WBOK 1230.
Good afternoon, New Orleans, and welcome to Put Housing First. I'm your host, Andronica Morris, and we are here today on this Tuesday afternoon, to talk about what it means to put housing first. Thank you for joining us. We are all remote today, calling in to the WBOK station on Xavier University's campus in New Orleans. So we can't talk about the weather. We can't talk about what's going on, what the drive time issues are in New Orleans this afternoon. But we are here today to talk about what it means to put housing first. We've got a great show planned for you today. We're going to continue some of the themes that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks because they're really important, particularly after Hurricane Francine. In the aftermath, while the storm itself was seen as modest by most standards, quote unquote, only $1 billion in damage. That means that but we have had an emergency declaration. We talked about this last week in about 8 parishes across South Louisiana, where there has been, where homes have been damaged, where businesses have been damaged, where lives have been uprooted. And we need to continue to talk about how do we make sure that we can stay in this place that we call home, that we all love so much here in New Orleans and in Jefferson Parish and on the North Shore and the river parishes and the Houma Terrebonne area, Plaquemines, everybody who's listening, and even people who are listening online across other parts of Louisiana, Shreveport, Alexandria, Monroe, Lake Charles, Lafayette, where they also see what the results of climate change. And that's what we're dealing with. That's why we're dealing with, a Hurricane Francine, a storm that moved so quickly and it so impactfully. And how do we make sure that the next storm we can survive, right? So that's what we want to focus on today. We want to focus on today on how we get ready for those storms. And we've got 2 special guests with us today. Both have been on the show before, so we're glad to have both of them back. We're doing this remotely, so I'm doing this without knowing for sure. We're texting people and letting them know that they need to be on. So I'm hearing that I think I have both of our callers on today, our guests on today. So first up, Nicole Barnes with Jericho Road Episcopal Housing Initiative. Nicole, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, there we go. And number 2, let's go 2 for 2. Jackie Dadakis with Green Coast Enterprises. Jackie, are you on?
I am present.
Yay! We did it! Technology. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us today. So as you all heard, I'm setting up the preface around the concept that we had for today, which is getting ready for the next storm, making sure our communities are ready for the next storm. And both of you have Intersecting views on this, you do work together often around the big issue around this. I want to talk about fortifying our homes and making them stronger, making them more energy efficient, so that when the next storm happens, not going to speak anything into existence, except I know we're keeping an eye out on the system that's soon to be named Helene, right? And we're going to think good thoughts for whatever community is impacted by it. But we need to get ready for whatever's coming after Helene, right? Because something is. It may not be this year, it may not be next year, but something's coming, as we saw with Francine. So first of all, I want the two of you to remind the listening audience about who you are and what you do. So Nicole, tell everybody about Jericho Road, and then Jackie, I want you to tell everyone about Green Coast Enterprises.
Thank you, Andronika. Again, my name is Nicole Barnes, and I'm Executive Director of Jericho Road Episcopal Housing Initiative, and we're an affordable housing developer in Southeast Louisiana. So we build affordable home ownership units, and we're working on rental units as well throughout the New Orleans metro area and extending into Southeast Louisiana. One of the hallmarks of the work that we do is creating homes that are resilient in terms of their sustainability and energy efficient homes, so that the affordability isn't just the price that we sell a house to someone. It involves being able to be affordable over time, meaning that on the front end, we ensure that we minimize the maintenance work for our homeowners as much as possible, because that in turn ensures that they are affordable. We also make sure that we build our homes with energy efficiency standards to ensure that they have lower cost in terms of their utilities, so that all contributes to their affordability. We also do work with financial capability and sustainability. Our work just doesn't end at the closing table. We help clients even after they have closed on their houses with workshops and support to be able to sustain their houses, maintain their houses, and hopefully pass their homes on to their kids and successive generations, and to build that generational wealth.
Thank you, Nicole. Jackie.
Hi, thanks for having me today, Andronika. I am Jackie Datakis with Green Coast Enterprises. We're a real estate development and services firm based here in New Orleans, and our mission for the last 15 years has been community resilience. And the primary ways we work on that now is actually supporting other developers like Nicole in achieving certifications to make sure the building's long-term operating costs for owners or tenants are going to be reasonable. So your utility bills, your insurance costs, all those other bills beyond your mortgage don't put the cost of housing out of reach. So we've done a lot of work with Energy Star certifications, energy efficiency certifications in the state, and then more recently have been supportive around the Fortified certification rollout. But in addition to the Fortified work, I myself have served on the Louisiana State Uniform Construction Code Council for 8 years now, and was part of the group that helped usher through the 2021 code update that includes a number of above code amendments we made, so that really new construction roofs are strong and built to withstand pretty hefty wind speeds here in the wind zone 3 part of the state.
Thank you, Jackie. So let's get you started. You gave us a really great window, or a launch pad, I should say, to continue the conversation. Two pieces I want to drill down on with your comments, Nicole, and with Jackie, and bring you in on this as well, Nicole, is the building codes, right? So we have new building codes here in Louisiana that actually, we passed them in 2022, right? And they went into effect in 2023. So anything new that's being built is being built to these new standards that guarantee energy efficiency, saving money, and that are 99% of the Fortified building recommendations that we keep seeing. Fortified is a specific brand on building technologies, but our codes are as good as that, right? So that means everything that's being built now is being built to these new standards. So homes that you're building, Nicole, Jackie's helping you, making sure that those homes are built to those standards. How is that working?
I mean, it's really working well, and I guess the best example for it would be the recent hurricane that we experienced with Hurricane Francine. Jericho's in the midst of building 19 homes in Terrebonne Parish, which took a more direct hit from Hurricane Francine. And I'm happy to say that when we went to do the assessment of the damage, we don't have a single shingle missing. And so we're looking at those investments being made on those homes, some homes that we did in Orleans Parish as well. Now, this wasn't a Cat 3 storm, but ideally, we need to be thinking about, as a region, building more resiliently. We've gotten our building codes up to the standards that we need to have them at, as you mentioned, Andronika. But now we need to. Those investments aren't cheap. They can be costly. And so we need to make sure that from an investment standpoint of public resources that we're putting money into helping our citizens to fortify, if you will, just using the little f, fortify, not to make their properties more resilient so that we can continue to live here. We're not going to get our way out of this insurance crisis by just rampant deregulation. It is going to take we have to mitigate the risk. And we realize that mitigating the risk means making retrofits to houses that exist to make them more resilient to storms and to wind and that type of damage, and also all of our new construction moving forward being built to those standards. That's how we're going to lower insurance prices. If we mitigate the risk, then we can lower those prices.
Jackie, what are you all seeing? Because that's a game changer, Nicole, right? The idea that you could come through a storm like Francine, and yeah, you're right, it wasn't a Cat 3, but there are people whose house, because it was raining for 2 weeks ahead of that, right? And then this comes through. People were without power, the roof might have been leaking already, or heck, you might not have been able to recover since Ida. And this just made it worse. So if we can get to a place, and Jackie, you can talk about this, if we can get to a place where we can assure folks that these homes are actually safe, that's mind-blowing.
It's so important, and I'm actually really proud of our region in how the response to Hurricane Francine went across the board. Obviously, we have some of our utilities that I think we wish had been a little bit more proactive in communicating during the storm. But the reality is, it wasn't a Category 3, but it was a strong Category 1, almost Category 2. I actually don't know where it fell when it finally hit landfall. And those winds were no joke as they came through the city. And we didn't have enough time to make plans to do anything except shelter in place. And I think that's becoming very clear over the last 5 years as everyone has watched these storms in the Gulf that come in so quickly. And this Helene seems to be on a similar trend where there's not enough time to say we're all actually going to be able to leave, which means we need to be assured that it's safe to stay. And I don't think there's been an official press release put out yet by the Louisiana Housing Corporation, but it does sound like very similar experience across that entire portfolio, in which there's been no major reported damage on recently constructed LHC housing coming out of that storm. And there's been quite a bit of housing that was built in that area where Francine, along that track, post-Ida, post-Zeta. There's been a significant amount of building happening there. So to know that those structures were sturdy through that storm is really, really heartening, and suggests that we are doing what we need to do, going back to the Three Little Pigs fable, to stop building our houses out of straw, but build them out of brick. And so now our great challenge, and I think we're also starting to see the significance of the investment being made in the existing building stock as well, whether it's homeowners making the choice to go a big fortified pathway or getting new roofs on, whether it's programs like Rebuilding Together here in the city of New Orleans that have been helping to get fortified roofs onto homes for low-income homeowners. I was impressed actually walking around the morning after Francine. I live in the South 7th Ward neighborhood. And after Zeta, there were tree branches everywhere. There were parts of roofs everywhere. The amount of debris in the street was significant, and that didn't happen this time. And I think it speaks to the fact that, you know, we've been making these investments. People have had to make these investments after the last couple of storms, but they've made good investments. And this hopefully sets us up to continue to come out of this crisis from a structural perspective so that we can really turn around and focus on the regulatory side of this and say, we've done our part. We've made our buildings stronger. We need to require the insurance companies to meet us where we are.
And both of you are saying the same thing, that we're not going to address the insurance crisis, which I want to also dig into because both of you also lead the Housing Louisiana statewide insurance task force. So thank you for your service. Because insurance is a big problem, and that's connected to the risk. Not only, to your point, Jackie, do we have to worry about whether or not we can stay. It's also about whether or not you can come back right after the danger is past. If your home has been damaged or destroyed, coming back becomes more difficult. And if you can leave with some assurances, if we have enough time and people can leave with assurances they will have a home to come back to, or at least the damage won't be quite as bad, that takes a load off of people. That also encourages people to be safe when they can. But that's the immediate consequences. The long-term consequences that we're living with is these sky-high insurance costs. And both of you have said real clear that the way we do this is we've got to make our community stronger. So y'all are both suggesting we just invest in the people. Isn't that a novel approach? We're not hearing that from too many of our leaders, correct?
That's correct.
We're not hearing it from our leaders, but they're also all bemoaning the fact that we're losing population. So at some point, you would hope these connections are going to start to be made, right? That unless we're investing in our people and investing in our communities, we're going to be the only state in the Sun Belt with consistent population loss. And that's a recipe for disaster for us, having nothing to do with the actual disasters that are coming through. And so I would hope they're starting to realize that connection. But you're correct, Andronika. I'm not hearing them talk about it from that perspective yet.
And, the thing is, I think that everybody's looking at what happened after Katrina and how people came back, no matter how challenging it was, because we want to live in this place that we love. And so I think that they may be betting on that no matter what happens, people will come back. It's just not the same even right now. I talk about the fact that after Hurricane Katrina, of course, we had an issue with insurance, and we thought it was really, really bad then because it was the worst that we had seen. Those are the good old days compared to what's happening right now with insurance. This crisis that we have right now is nothing compared to, the crisis that we have to Katrina is nothing compared to the crisis that we had now. If only we could go back to the days of the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in terms of insurance costs. So like we talked about, people are leaving not because they don't want to be. I think they want to be here, but now they don't have a choice. It was really hard to make the choice to come back after Katrina, but you were still able. Some people were still able to. There are plenty of people who could not. But at this point now, I think that people you don't have a choice. Well, what we're seeing with insurance, there's not a room that I go into that is not the topic. And it's not just a topic for people who have low to moderate income. It is a topic for people who live in a garden district. It is a topic for everyone. It's a topic for schools. It's a topic for businesses. It's a topic for houses of worship. When churches can't pay their insurance, we really have to figure this out. And our leaders have to recognize that this is going to happen on parallel tracks, and it's not. Again, I'm going to say it's not just going to happen from rampant deregulation. There has to be investment. There has to be policy interventions that ensure that once we make these investments, that the correlating discounts are made available to citizens so that we can remain here, so that we can pay our mortgages, so that we can pay our rent. And those things, I think, have not been realized, and we need to be pressing more to ensure that happens, because all of these things are going to happen on parallel tracks, happening, full speed ahead on each track. Another thing, too, is we're going to have to look at seriously thinking about how we subsidize some of this work as well. When we look at preservation, everybody's been talking about the cost for insurance and continuing to develop, but we're going to lose existing affordable housing units because those properties can't cash flow in terms of operations because they did not fathom, no one fathomed, an insurance bill that's quadrupled. So we're going to need to be thinking about in this 3 to 5 year period that it typically takes for the market to stabilize after a disaster to the magnitude of a Katrina or Ida, that we're going to have to also make interventions in terms of subsidizing those properties and those businesses to make sure that everybody can maintain until we stabilize.
So that's a good segue, Nicole, because I love the way you all teed this up and have taken everybody through the pieces, like what's possible. Number one, you both have made the case and brought evidence, y'all got y'all receipts, that improving the quality of the homes and our structures, like making our communities actually safe, leads to safer communities, right? Making the building safer and giving people a chance to access those kind of housing opportunities solves the problem. But we have a lot more to do, right? Because you personally worked on, built, certified homes that survived the storms. You also know of people who didn't, right? And so, Nicole, that's how you're taking us to the next piece, is we have to get that investment widespread. What are the challenges besides our policymakers, right? Because we're going to talk about them, but I want to talk about some of the pragmatic problems or hurdles that we still need to overcome to get every home, every business, every place of worship. Love the way you did that, Nicole. That's such a great point that I think people ignore. It's all of our communities that are at risk here. And what's beyond money? So let's put the two biggest problems, political will and money, to the side. What else are we missing in order to make this work? Okay, that silence either means.
Well, I'll start. And I'll start by saying I actually had a lovely evening last night at an event to support the New Orleans Career Center, which is one of the public high schools, charter schools here in the city of New Orleans now, that is specifically dedicated to supporting a number of workforce initiatives, but the trades in particular. So, and high schoolers from any of the high schools within the district can actually opt in to partial day or half day programs there, setting themselves up on a pathway to become an electrician, to become a carpenter, to become a plumber. And it's my lead into saying, if we don't have the workforce to repair, to build, to learn these new techniques, we're not going to be able to actually get this done. There's no magic wand from a regulatory perspective that says we've instituted these codes and now it's always going to be built perfectly to these codes. So we're looking at a generational moment to invest in our trades, to invest in a new generation coming into the trades and learning to build in this new way to make sure our structures will be strong. It's a massive job growth opportunity here for us as a state. I think we all know the experience when we do have bad storms coming through of all of a sudden looking around, there's nothing but Texas license plates and Texas-based contractors suddenly going up and down every single street. We've got to be able to actually have our own base of contractors here to respond, and the ability to know that when someone is hiring someone to put a new roof on, those roofers are going to know the proper new construction techniques. They're going to be able to get through whatever sort of certification process that homeowner might choose, and that we can with confidence say that these buildings are getting built to a higher standard.
Nicole, okay, so you're talking about the folks that actually do the work, Jackie. That's important. And correct me if I'm wrong, those sound like business opportunities as well.
Absolutely.
Job opportunities.
It
Small
absolutely
business
is.
opportunities.
That's something that, you know, at Jericho, and I didn't mention this in my intro, which I was thoroughly continuing, is that that's part of what we found as we've been doing this work. We have our own workforce development crew because, you know, we live in a region that has a 100-year storm, a 100-year weather event, at least a couple times a year now. So, and in the region itself, you know, there was a hurricane in Texas. There may be a hurricane in Florida this week. So you find that you have contractors being spread thin. And then when you're trying to get this work done, you don't have people who are trained, who are certified, who know the building techniques to be able to do this work. And why not invest in our workforce, you know, train young people in these careers to be able to take on this work, whether they work like for someone like Jericho through our workforce development crew, or ultimately become contractors themselves and become entrepreneurs. We have to, that's still yet again another issue of investment in Louisiana needing to invest in its own citizens. I mean, if we're going to stay in this place that we live and that we love, we have to make the investments in people. We have to prioritize people. And as you pointed out, Andronika, there doesn't seem to be an emphasis on that.
So what y'all are talking about is, again, the things that we hear from our leaders all the time. You know, we've got to diversify our business, our economy, right? And people need to go get some good jobs. And here you are talking about making the case for a crisis, right? This is, people overuse the term existential crisis. This is just a crisis, right? We're losing population. These storms are becoming more unpredictable. And while this one wasn't that bad, $1 billion in damage is nothing to sneeze at. I know I don't have $1 billion to fix the $1 billion in damage. And I do know that despite the fact that we've got an emergency declaration from President Biden, it will be years before the millions that the federal government can provide to address that $1 billion worth of damage is going to really be on the ground. That's just how it works. People are fighting with their insurance companies already, right? And we're going to see how that works and then how we close the gap. In the meantime, people will be looking around saying, you know what, I'm not for this. And you said this earlier, Nicole. I remember that you talked about how it's different that people who wanted to come back, who fought to come back after Katrina, they're looking at this and they're saying, okay, I can't do this anymore. They're not being defeated. They're making choices, or they are being forced out in small waves, right? They're either being evicted or foreclosed on. I was talking with one of the folks at Neighborhood Development Foundation, and they were saying they had looked at the recent court filings, and that last month alone it was about $4 million just in New Orleans of foreclosures. That's a lot of money in one parish in 1 month. That's a lot of wealth going up in smoke in 1 month, coming out of people's hands. And you know, before everybody gets up on their high horse about, you know, people need to be responsible and pay their bills. Nicole, you talked about this. We're not talking about people making choices. We're not talking about people being irresponsible. We're talking about math. I I dare anybody, and y'all can call in. If y'all one of the people who can afford your mortgage tripling, holla, call us. Please call us. Let us know who you are so we can laud you. But I'm pretty sure most of the people listening to this could not afford their mortgage tripling. And still go, well, yeah, I can stay here. I can stay here. I can make this work.
And Andronika, that brings up another point too. It's something that I've constantly been talking about long before we've gotten to this point with the Housing Trust Fund, which I'm about to bring up. I keep saying we live in a region that has a weather event, the 100-year storm or event a couple of times a year. And we know the drill. We know that eventually we will get help from the federal government, but that process just takes time, and it takes like 2 years. It is bananas that we don't have a mechanism to respond to our citizenry in the immediate aftermath of a weather event or crisis like this, just until to help people to maintain and to recover until we get the federal funds that we need. That it just makes no sense. And so, that's one of the reasons why we have been also advocating for a housing trust fund, funds that we put forth from our city to be able to respond in the immediate aftermath. You can't wait 2 years of having your roof with a hole in it if you can't repair it, because then the damage is only going to get worse. But if you can have some immediate relief from a program or from a process that will allow you to be able to answer and to respond in the emergency immediate aftermath, then that makes sense. It's just not logical. So that's one of the reasons why we've been advocating for it, not just at the local level, but at the state level as well. We have a housing trust fund apparatus at the state level, but we don't have a dedicated revenue source. People cannot wait 2 years to repair their homes or to even do the emergency things that they need to do, to wait for fighting with your insurance company and also the federal resources that come. We need to be able to be responsive to citizens in the immediate aftermath of an event. And a housing trust fund that is capitalized can do that.
Yep. Jackie, you want to chime in?
Well, I think that is just so imperative for the work we're trying to do right now here on the ground, and the entire reason you want to get that roof back as quickly as possible is any additional water damage into that house just continues to deteriorate the situation, make the final cost of repair so much higher. And the fact that we don't have a way to just prioritize getting roofs back on. We all know the blue tarps show up immediately, but then they blow off so quickly afterwards. It's one of those things in which you kind of wish you could just restructure the entire way funding flows post-storm, because it'll flow eventually, hopefully, in most cases. Something will come through to fix that roof. But after 3 years, then you're talking about collapsed ceilings. You're talking about deteriorated insulation. You're talking about poor energy efficiency of the home overall long term. And so you've caused so much more damage instead of getting out in front of it. And so I love the idea of a housing trust fund. I'm free to set up the two of you to talk more about exactly what is on the table right now, because I haven't been following as closely, except just to say that I'm very much in favor of what we're trying to do right now here in the city. But having the funds available to deploy as quickly as possible would just really, really change the experience for so many of the residents in the state.
That's right. So making sure that we actually have cash on hand, right? So that's part of the solutions. I'm going to get to I want to get back to some of the solutions that we're talking about. So you all laid out the case. I'm going to keep reminding everybody why these two ladies are on here with their expertise. Number one, we have the building technology to make homes safe at a reasonable level so that if you have to stay in a fast-moving event that could be, to Nicole's point, a 100-year storm that just pops up out of nowhere, to Jackie's point about how things are moving really quickly, but it's not going to be something that's life-threatening. So it'll be something like a Hurricane Ida, it'll be like a Francine, and where you can stay, you can be assured that your house will be safe. We also talking about we have the building technology to make sure your business, where you go to church, where you go to work, your place of worship, could also be safe so that you could come back. One, get services, two, come back to work, three, actually come back to a home that won't be as bad off if you do have to leave, if we do have to leave. And the big thing that we need to invest in to make this work beyond political will and money is people and businesses to do the work. Businesses, Jackie, you just laid this out really clearly, that there is a $1 billion business opportunity right there for the taking. Not to bring in new businesses from other places, the kind of homegrown businesses, contractors, roofers, people who literally the kind of craftsmen and artisans that built this city. Many of them are still here. They're still working. There's still opportunity to do that. We could grow these businesses, make sure that they have a future, right? Nicole, you talked about the the workforce development program that Jericho Road is doing. So there are all of these pieces there. They obviously all need to be grossed up, right, and invested in, and say, instead of being talk about investing in the economy, that talk has to become action. So now we come back to the political will piece, and we've got a really good opportunity to demonstrate that with the Housing Trust Fund, which is on the ballot November 5th, which got approved last week, the mechanism for it got approved last week by the New Orleans City Council, that would create about $17 million annually in funds that would be available to address these kinds of needs and to put together programs that would, over the long term, give us a little bit more, not just flexibility, but give us more of a say in how these dollars are invested. Right now, all of the money that is invested in housing comes from a couple of sources. The lion's share of money that we're talking about when we think about affordable housing comes to the federal government in some form or fashion, either through the housing authority or it goes through the city. We don't spend any of our own resources on it. And then we get private equity from banks, and they get to pick what, they think is going to make them the most money. And the trust fund represents an opportunity for the people of New Orleans to say, this is what we want to invest in. We want to make our community stronger, and we want to make ourselves more self-resilient, more self-reliant on businesses that could help fix up the homes in the neighborhood, people getting paid to do that. And then you've got two things. You got the win-win. Like, that business has been paid, that person has received the service, and they live in a great house. Someone has been trained and learned a marketable skill that they can do something else with. As that other money comes in, as these other opportunities present themselves, why is there still just a struggle around this? Like, what do we keep letting ourselves get distracted by? What are the false solutions that we need to just kind of also dive in on? Nicole, you started to talk about them a little bit. So did you, Jackie. We keep hearing regulation, right? We keep hearing, let's make things easy for insurers. We keep hearing, let's make things easy for businesses to be here, and the benefits will trickle down. So what else are we getting distracted by that is ultimately not going to help us?
Well, I think one of the things and I think I alluded to this, that we have been distracted by when people think about affordable housing and making things more affordable, that it's a problem of the poor people, that this doesn't include me. But like I said, there's not a there's not a room that I go into that insurance is not the topic of the day, because it's affecting all of us and it affects us all in different ways. So I think a big part of that too is getting people to be able to verbalize. We need assistance. We need help. We need our leaders to make policy that helps us to be able to afford to be here. We need our leaders to ensure that we are building to the standards that will make our homes resilient, so that this region can be secure when the storms that we know, not if the storm comes, when the storm comes, that we know are coming. We were just looking at a couple of months ago, the LEC was considering thinking about not, requiring these resilient building interventions as a part of their projects as a cost-saving mechanism. It's the exact opposite. The way you're going to save money is to make this investment on the front end, because you won't have to worry about the costly repairs that come when your house is not, or your structure is not built resiliently. So we also have to think about changing the mindset, and what we as citizens demand and expect of our leadership as well.
Jackie, you got anything? What are you seeing as distractions, costly distractions from the, or arguments against? Like, what are we hearing when you say to folks, okay, let's implement this new code and let's talk about new building standards. And I have to give a shout out to our friends at the Home Builders Association who were on the front line of that fight. So the building experts were like, yeah, the code's got to get changed. We got to build to better standards. So when people who don't do this for a living, what do they say when you talk about looking to improve codes and building standards? What do they say that, you don't know what you're talking about? I want to hear even though they're bad arguments, I want to hear the bad arguments.
Yeah, and it's probably starting to touch on that with what you're saying around recent attacks that have been coming.
Oh, Jackie, you're getting a little garbled on us.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Nicole was starting to touch on this with some of the recent attacks on the standards we have put in place, because there's this big concern that, cost of construction undeniably much higher today than it was in 2019. But a lot of things have happened since 2019 that have led to higher construction prices, and the code adjustment really came in at the end of all of that. Prices had already gone up substantially before our new building code came into effect. And so to think that magically saying, okay, we're going to loosen code is going to drive down the cost of lumber, is going to drive down the cost of HVAC equipment, that's just not true. And so I think that's an argument that's really frustrating right now, as we're putting so much time and energy, and you're seeing the home builders at the table, you're seeing AIA and architects at the table to really embrace this and adopt this, to have people that aren't actually in the industry, in the field, pointing at it and saying, oh, well, if we get rid of the code, the prices will come down. It's like, no, if you get rid of the code, you'll pay a lot of money to build a house, and it'll still fall over. And so that argument is definitely circulating. The other argument that I think is just a lack of data, and if we could really get the insurance commissioner, a number of our friends who have been working in this space who've been doing this work, if we can start to build this data set, the argument I'm finding really frustrating is that it's not worth building or re-roofing to a higher standard than was there before. So you have the option, if you've got a 1985 house, when you go to re-roof that house, you could put it on exactly the way they built in 1985, because code doesn't really drill down to that right now. Or you could choose to go and build a stronger roof. You could choose to say, I want it to be built to the 2021 code standard. You could choose to go even higher and say, I'm going to get this fortified certified. The argument that seems to be circulating is, by building something better than was there before, you're increasing the value of your house, your insurance is going to go up anyway because the value of your house is going to go up. And we're definitely not seeing discounts in the field, but I really, really kind of bristle at this argument that you should just replace exactly what was there the way it was built 20, 30 years ago versus trying to bring it up to a current standard. Because you're only going to put a roof on, every 10, 15 years. So if you're going to do that intervention, let's make sure you do it right.
Jackie, that sounds so, forgive that's just batty, right? I mean,
yes.
And why would we want to encourage people to a home? I mean, again, there's just we have a problem with logic these days, right? Especially when it comes from policymakers and bankers and investors and people who are opposing common sense solutions when we're talking about investing in strengthening communities. And I think, Nicole, you were getting to this. Part of it is you get asked the question, who do you want to who is worthy of investment? And I think everybody who's listening to this needs to really grapple with that idea. If you for a second are thinking that there's somebody some neighbor, some family member who you think isn't worthy of these kinds of investments, you better damn sure know somebody's probably thinking that about you. Mm-hmm. And that should give you pause. That should give you pause, because if you are going to spend your time working to keep someone else from getting something that they don't deserve, someone else is going to be putting the exact amount of effort in and keeping it away from you. And y'all are all going to be talking in the same room. You're going to be voting in the same precincts and districts, and y'all might be pulling the lever for the same people, and you told them to keep it away from you. And what our leaders hear when we say that is, oh, yeah, they don't want this money. They don't want us investing in them. And you didn't mean you, because you're one of the good ones. You work hard. You play by the rules. You've done the right thing. But you set these impossible standards for your neighbors and your friends and your family because you're scared that someone's going to take something from you. We have to move past this short-sightedness and we see it time and time and time again. That's why it takes so long to get federal assistance. That's why we need to have our own money on hand to make investments in our communities. We need to be talking, and we need to say, I want help. I want help. My house just got flattened by a tornado. I would like some help. Again, if you are one of these people who are solely self-reliant, and when the worst thing happens to you that you can ever imagine, you don't need anybody's help, go away. Okay, great. You can go over there by yourself. We'll be over here, the rest of us who live and work in community and recognize that we are dependent upon each other. Can we get those of you who want to opt out of the grand experiment to go ahead and opt out all the way? Don't think you need to be in charge, certainly. Because, Nicole, Jackie, what y'all are talking about makes all the sense in the world. That's why I wanted you all to talk about some of the stupid things people say to y'all, so that anybody who might be listening, who didn't want to call in, I've offered people the chance to call in. These ladies are very nice. They would have listened to your questions. You heard how they described some of the dumb things that people have said to them, and I thought they both did a really good job articulating those counter arguments while dismissing them or really addressing them. They're really nice ladies. So you can call in and ask them questions, and they will answer them. I'm going to make fun of you, right? This is a radio show. That's what we're doing. But we're also going to try to educate because at the end of the day, this is too serious. I want to make sure we recap. We're coming up on time. I want to make sure we recap some of the things that we heard today. Number one, homes built in the Houma Terrebonne area, 19 brand new homes built to the fortified gold, Nicole?
Yes.
The fortified gold standards didn't lose a shingle in Hurricane Francine. And so I want y'all to think about looking at your neighborhood and thinking about how comfortable you felt sitting in your home during Hurricane Francine, and thinking about how comfortable you would have felt if you lived in one of those 19 homes. Just think about that for a second. Just a second. And then say, okay, I would like that. How do we go get it? Then Jackie talked about the fact that we have new building codes, and this is a business opportunity. Many of you know contractors. Many of you have kids who don't necessarily want to go to college, who would like the idea of learning a trade. We talk about these things in these idealistic ways. And then when they don't match our reality, we kind of just shrug. Well, here is a way, the idealistic way that we think about being a business owner, a contractor, a skilled laborer, can play out to the benefit of the community. What's missing? The political will and the money. And coming up on November 5th, you will have the opportunity here in New Orleans to demonstrate both. You can tell the mayor and the city council that you want them to take 2% of the revenue that we have coming in. This is not a new tax. We're not asking anybody to pay any more than they can afford. Taking 2% of the existing revenue that we're already contributing and say, I want you to make sure that this gets invested in my home, in my neighborhood, in my community. That's what voting yes means. That you're telling them to put that money to the side and that you are going to engage to make sure that the money is spent the way that it needs to be. They've designed a process, the city council has designed a process that engages community. So the money, no one can go, I don't know where the money went. That's not how this is designed. They actually passed an ordinance last week to make sure that if the trust fund, which is not a new tax, is voted on, community will participate in it. Community will have a say, and community will see what our leaders are doing. You want them to come back and ask and go, well, what happened with that money? And then people go, we're not sure. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen this time. But you have to say that. You have to send that message. We have to send that message to our leaders. There are opportunities to do so. And then these ladies can, and not even then, while this is happening, we need to be saying to the city council, okay, and to the mayor's office, how do we get ready for the next storm? What money do you have on hand right now? Let's see what we can do. The city of New Orleans actually earlier this year launched a small pilot program on fortified roofs. How about we get them to expand it? They're looking at different ways. They've over the last couple of years, they've made investments to make sure that people who are facing eviction have lawyers. We need to make sure that that funding is secured and also included in the next budget. We need to make sure that the homeless services that we're providing, the work that's going on, that's done really well. And those conversations are all going to be had in the next few weeks with the upcoming budget cycle. These conversations are going to be had. We're going to be talking about them on this show. But we also want to make sure you understand how they connect to these very specific issues that people are dealing with. Nicole said it. Everybody's talking about insurance. We've talked about insurance for the last 3 weeks in a row, and we're going to continue to talk about insurance because this is the biggest threat that we have to being able to stay here. Not just the cost, the fact that insurance is so expensive, people are choosing to sell their homes and live somewhere else and move somewhere else rather than stay in our state. They also can't afford, some people can't afford insurance. And if the worst should happen, forget about Hurricane Francine. What if just a regular fire happens? We just had a building collapse just randomly. People lost their cars because they were parked by this building. If those people don't have car insurance, guess what? They're out of their cars. So if something happened randomly to your home, it happens all the time. And if your insurance isn't up to date, if you don't have it, you will be stuck. So that's why we wanted these ladies on. We only have about a couple minutes left. I want to thank both of you for joining us. If there's anything else y'all want to add, make sure that we might have missed. I thought this was pretty intense on this specific issue, and I thank you both for joining us. But I want to make sure our two guests add anything else that you have to say. Y'all don't jump all over each other now.
Okay. Well, this is Nicole. Just want to emphasize that we need to be focused on building resiliently as a region. Again, I just cannot emphasize enough that insurers come into the market depending upon their risk. They write policies in terms of the cost dependent upon the risk that is there. We need to be able to mitigate the risk here in our region in order to be able to reduce this cost on insurance. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is, the primary way we're going to be able to do that is through building resiliently, building homes that can withstand the storms that we know are coming, and to reduce the ever-increasing losses that we're seeing as a result of our structures not being making sure that we are not only looking at new construction being built resiliently, but also looking at what we need to do in terms of retrofitting existing structures so that everyone can be here, so that homes that are being passed down from generations can continue to can be passed down to successive generations, so that we can be here and realize the legacy of our families who have lived, who've been born and raised and lived in this region for generations. And we have to hold our leaders accountable in terms of making sure that the policies that they enact, that the investments of our tax dollars that are already existing. And I wanted to make a point, Andronika, that the Housing Trust Fund is an appropriation. It's not a tax. Somebody said that to me. We want everybody to be clear that it's not a tax. It's just the city actually using our money to invest in our citizens, in the well-being of our citizens. That is what it is. It's not, it's the city actually putting some of its money toward the biggest crisis that is facing our citizens, and that is housing and insurance. So, I mean, I think it's, when I think about it, given what I do, it's a no-brainer, but we need to get that message out to people as much as we can.
I think that's a great way to end. Jackie, do you have anything else that you want to add?
Here, Nicole. Let's support this Housing Trust Fund.
That's a great way to end. I want to thank our guests today, Jackie Datticus with Green Coast Enterprises and Nicole Barnes with Jericho Road Episcopal Housing Initiative. I'm your host, Andronika Mars. We'll be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel, talking about what it means to put housing first here on WBOK 1230 AM. Y'all take care and be safe, everybody.